Good morning, students, and welcome to another video lecture on the Indian political system. The subtopic that we will be dealing with today is electoral and party political system, especially about the elections, focusing on 5 important elections that India has faced so far post-independence: 1952, 1977, 1989, 1998, and 2004, and the run-up to all these elections. Indian Constitution, it declares India as a democratic republic, and thus elections form the foundation of this country. The Constituent Assembly advocated the creation of a constitutional body named Election Commission, which would be responsible for conducting the elections in the country at the national level. The institution will comprise of a chief election commissioner and 2 other election commissioners. All these appointments are to be made by the president. This is what the constitution says. We will review some of the major Lok Sabha elections in this lecture and analyze the political parties, their performances and the trends. But first, let us look at the constitutional provisions related to electoral system in India. Part 15 of the Constitution, right from Article 324 to 329, it talks about the special provisions related to the Election Commission of India. We will discuss some of the main provisions. First, we will look at the functions of Election Commission. It supervises, directs, it controls the preparation of electoral rolls and the conduct of all the elections to the parliament and the legislature of every state, and of the elections to the offices of president and vice president. Talking about the composition of the election commission, it consists of one chief election commissioner and any number of election commissioners as the president thinks is fit for the country, as the president may from time to time fix, and more so, the appointments shall be governed by the laws made by the parliament. When more than one commissioner is appointed, the chief election commissioner acts like the chairman of the election commission. Besides these constitutional provisions, Parliament has also enacted the Representation of People's Act 1951. This act also influences the Indian electoral system. Why? Because it talks about the details of qualification and disqualification of the people who want to run for these elections, who want to be a prospective candidate for the elections, and want to gain membership of the parliament or the state legislature. Listing some grounds of disqualification: promoting enmity between different groups on the grounds of religion, race, place of birth, language, disturbing the harmony, bribing someone to win the election, exerting undue influence on the electorates or other factors in the democracy, cruelty towards women by a husband or other relatives on the husband's side, and also practicing untouchability is a crime. And the list is really long. It's mentioned in detail in the Representation of People's Act. You can see on your screen the list of all the Lok Sabha elections. You do not need to learn these dates by heart, but just a look at it will give you a better idea of the politics and its trends in India. Just have a look. Let us now look at some election statistics. On your screens, you can see on the extreme left-hand side, it's mentioned year. These are the years of 5 important elections that we're going to talk about. The next column towards right is the number of voters mentioned in crore. You can see the jump the number of voters has taken. Right from 17 crore, that's the first figure in the list of number of voters. In 1952, we had just about 17 crore voters. It completely shot up to 72 crores by the time we reached 2004. You can also see the list of national parties. Initially, for the first elections, we had 14 national parties and 39 regional parties, which reduced down to 5 national parties in the next election and 15 regional parties, and so on. You can clearly see the figures on your screen. Number of constituencies have also increased. In 1952, we had 489 constituencies. And by the time we reached 2004, we had 543 constituency. The number is still the same in 2021. Okay. Some of the major political parties that India has seen include Indian National Congress, the BJP, the CPI, that's the Communist Party of India, Communist Party of India Marxist, Nationalist Congress Party, Rashtriya Janata Dal, Bharatiya Lok Dal, and Janata Dal. And there have been so many other parties, smaller and bigger. Indian elections are one of the largest events on this globe. So many people, crores and crores of people involved in this process. It makes it one of the biggest events on this planet. The election process takes about a month to complete. And at the time of India's independence, there were 17 crore voters. And by the time of 2009, India had a voter count of which was exceeding 70 crore, which we just discussed. Thus, to conduct elections on one single day throughout the country is not practically possible. Hence, the Indian elections are conducted throughout the country in various phases on different dates. The first step in the preparation of the elections is publishing of the electoral rolls by the Election Commission. In the next step, the dates of the nomination, polling, and counting of the voters by Election Commission is announced. And just before I move forward, I would like to clarify what electoral rolls mean. These are the list of voters in every constituency. Election Commission publishes the names of the people who are eligible to vote in a particular constituencies, and these lists are called electoral rolls. Moving ahead, the day when the dates for the nomination, polling, and counting of the votes is decided, that is the day when Model Code of Conduct comes into force. Now, what is Model Code of Conduct? It is a set of guidelines issued by the Election Commission of India for conducting elections, and it is actually the guidelines which direct the political parties to behave in a certain way throughout the process of elections in the country. All right. And the candidates during elections, they mainly have to respect all the institutions in the democracy. That is what the Model Code of Conduct tells them. They do not have to make speeches which are provocating, which might hurt somebody's sentiments. On the polling day, on the polling booths, the portfolio election manifestos that they issue, or generally the way they conduct themselves, has to be in line with the principles of democracy that this country follows. The age of the candidates should be at least 25 years, and he or she should be a registered voter. Candidates are required to declare their assets, their age, their education qualification, and even their criminal history if any exists. A candidate who wishes to contest election is required to make a security deposit at the time when he is filing his nomination papers. This amount is 25,000 rupees. For the scheduled tribes and for the scheduled caste candidates, this amount is reduced to 12,500 rupees. A person cannot contest elections from more than 2 constituencies. This is a rule. Post this phase, the political parties and candidates that start the campaigning process. Various methods are used to inform and educate the voters, including large hoardings, posters, freebies are given to the people, rallies are organized, nukkad meetings are organized, even door-to-door campaigning method is used. Campaigning stops exactly 48 hours before the polling day in the constituency. Candidates have to submit their daily election expenses details to the Election Commission so that the entire process and the money spent on this process remains very transparent. On the D-Day, when the voting finally has to take place, huge security arrangements are made. Election Commission takes the permission from the respective state governments and the central government also to appoint the government employees as temporary staff to help the commission conduct these elections very smoothly. There has been a major shift in the way the elections are conducted. Before 1999, paper ballots were used to cast the votes. In 1999, partial use of EVMs started, and since 2004, all the elections are conducted with the help of EVMs. The use of EVMs has made the process of elections much more reliable. It takes much lesser time while counting the votes. it has become easier and much faster. That's the underlying benefit of using EDMs. Currently, there are about 543 constituencies in total in India, out of which 412 are reserved for general category candidates, and the rest 84 are reserved for scheduled tribes and scheduled caste candidates. Talking about Maharashtra in specific, it has 48 Indian constituencies, out of which 39 are reserved for general category candidates and 5 are reserved for scheduled caste. These 5 constituencies reserved for SC candidates include Amravati, Ramtek, Shirdi, Latur, and Solapur. And there are 4 other constituencies which are specifically reserved for the scheduled tribes, and these are Nandurbar, Gadchiroli, Chimur, Dindori, and Palghar. If for some reason a seat becomes vacant before the completion of full term, then by-elections are held. These elections are conducted in the middle of the term to fill a vacancy. After the election results are declared, if the candidate does not secure even 1/6 of the valid votes polled in his constituency, in his particular name specifically, his security deposit gets forfeited. He doesn't even get that 25,000, or in case he's an SC/ST candidate, the 12,500 that he deposited, he will not get back if he did not get 1/6 of the votes also. And thus the money gets forfeited. Neither the Constitution nor the government has set any limit for the maximum number of candidates who can contest from one single constituency at a time. So an interesting fact is that in 1995 Legislative Assembly elections in Tamil Nadu's constituency of Modakuruchi, please correct me in the comment section if I pronounced that name wrong. The total number of candidates contesting were 1,033 from this one single constituency, and the ballot paper literally looked like a booklet because one single piece of paper couldn't accommodate the names of 1,033 candidates, so it felt like a booklet. Election Commission has set a maximum expenditure limit on the candidates while contesting elections. For smaller states, if a candidate is running the elections from a smaller state, then he can spend 54 lakh rupees in the entire process of campaigning. If he is fighting the election from a larger state, he's allowed to spend 70 lakh rupees throughout the process. This is the maximum limit. Initially, only 1,000 to 1,200 voters were assigned to one polling station, but with the introduction of EVMs, this number has considerably increased, and now each polling station has 1,500 registered voters. Polling stations must not be more than 2 kilometers away from any voter. It is the responsibility of the Election Commission to ensure this. Bribing the voters in any form or undertaking religious campaigns at any point during the course of elections is an offense. It's a criminal offense. All right. So now that we're well versed with how the political process, the process of election actually works in the country, let us look at some of the important Lok Sabha elections. The first election post-independence was conducted in the year 1951-52. And at this point, election to the parliament and all the state legislative assemblies was conducted together. Elections were held between 25th October 1951 and 21st February 1952 for 489 seats of Lok Sabha in 26 states. Total population of India at this time was 30 crores, which is actually the current population of United States of America. The total number of eligible voters were nearly 17 crore. Please keep this in mind. After independence, the voting age was 21 years and above. Now, currently, we are allowed to vote after we are 18. But at that point, the elections which we're talking about, only 21 plus people could vote. A lot of political parties, in fact, political experts were very fearful about India's first elections. They thought it would be a complete chaos, confusion, and lead to a lot of violence. But with the efforts of Indian bureaucracy, Indian political class, and Indian citizens, it became one of the most successful experiments in the independent India. Elections were conducted with a lot of respect towards the constitution. At the end, INC won 364 seats and thus came to power. Congress was able to secure about 45% of the total votes casted. The next important elections that we will talk about is 1977 Lok Sabha election. This was the sixth Lok Sabha election. This election became extremely important because from 1975 to 77, India was kept under the chains of national emergency, which became extremely controversial. Last elections were held in 1971. Till 1971, all the elections were going as per the schedule. All the governments were completing their 5-year terms and moving ahead and conducting elections. But in 1971, Indira Gandhi government declared midterm polls suddenly and even won these polls by a thumping majority. So after these midterm elections were held suddenly by Indira Gandhi and her government, Indira Gandhi again took the position of prime minister as her party won. She had to face a movement of opposition this time when she came to office. This movement was organized by Jayaprakash Narayan. This movement criticized the Congress for breeding corruption in the country. Many cases were filed against Indira Gandhi for malpractices in the elections. Finally, the court declared the 1971 elections as illegal and unseated Indira Gandhi from the position of prime minister. In retaliation, in fact, to save her seat, to save her power, which she didn't want to let go, she declared emergency single handedly without even consulting her council of ministers. All the opposition members were thrown into the jails. The common people had to suffer a lot of damages during this entire 2-year course of emergency. Emergency was finally lifted in 1977 and the elections were held. Congress party lost the elections and Janata Party, which was composed of mainly the socialists and the communists, came to power. Morarji Desai became the next prime minister of the country. Coming to the next important Lok Sabha elections that were held in 1989, the third pointed on your screen. In these elections, Congress government led by Rajiv Gandhi was defeated by VP Singh-led Janata Dal and National Front Alliance. VP Singh was appointed as the Prime Minister in 1984. Elections, which were held just before these elections, Congress had benefited from the sympathy wave caused due to Indira Gandhi's assassination. Congress won the elections with sweeping majority. But later, for next 5 years, when Rajiv Gandhi was the prime minister, his government was surrounded with too many controversies, some being the Shahbano case, Ram Mandir, Babri Masjid dispute, the Muslim women protection of their rights for Divorce Act 1986. So there were some corruption charges also against the government in the Beaufort case. All this led to declining popularity of Rajiv Gandhi amongst the masses, and ultimately in 1989 he lost the elections. VP Singh, who became the next prime minister, was actually a member of Congress and even served as a finance minister under Rajiv Gandhi's government. He later left the party, he left Congress and joined hands with BJP and others to stand against the Congress in the elections, and he successfully won. Let's take a look at how was the run-up to the elections to 1998 Lok Sabha. VP Singh government, which was formed in 1989, lasted for barely 11 months. Now, it was defeated in a no-confidence motion based on chaos in the country due to implementation of 27% quota for the OBC community as recommended by the Mandal Commission. So there was a lot of dissatisfaction in the country, a lot of chaos, a lot of confusion in the country. There were riots, there were protests. So a no-confidence motion was raised by the opposition, which they were also successfully able to pass, and VP Singh government was unseated. After the fall of VP Singh's government, Chandrasekhar Azad formed a government with the help of Congress, but this also could not last very long. In 1991, when Rajiv Gandhi got assassinated, Congress won some voters back and came to power. But this time, it was very different. They had to take support from a lot of regional parties to form the coalition government. Narasimha Rao was appointed as the prime minister, and this government was able to complete the full 5-year term. The road ahead was quite bumpy again. In 1996 elections, no party won a clear majority, not even Congress, and it was a hung parliament situation. India saw the political power being shifted between three different political parties and alliances just within the span of 2 years. Initially, Atal Bihari Vajpayee led government lasted for barely 13 days, followed by the government led by Deve Gowda and I.K. Gujral. In 1998, again, there was a hung parliament situation post the elections. BJP somehow managed to get support of the regional parties and it formed the government. But it also collapsed due to the withdrawal of the support from small regional parties and their alliance partners. But due to the crucial situation that the country was going through at the border with Pakistan, which ultimately led to the Kargil War, Vajpayee remained the caretaking prime minister of the country till 1999. Next election took place in September 1999. So moving forward from here, let's continue to talk about India's election scenario till 2004 Lok Sabha elections. So in 1999, as we talked, BJP and its alliance partners, they ruled for 5 years, and this was the first time it had completed a full term. Next elections were held in 2004. And this time, Congress managed to come to power again in the form of a coalition government. It didn't secure a clear majority in the elections. These elections were held in 4 phases from April 20 to May 10, 2004 for 543 constituencies, and more than 70 crore voters were registered. It was also one of the most expansive, one of the most elaborative elections in the history of India, with so many people involved, so many voters involved. 7 national parties and 34 regional parties, along with so many other smaller political parties, participated in the election process. Many opposition leaders were opposing the idea of Sonia Gandhi becoming the Prime Minister of independent India, as she was not an Indian citizen by birth. This is the argument the opposition gave. So finally, Congress declared Manmohan Singh as the next Prime Minister. And he continued to remain the Prime Minister for 2014, only later when he was replaced by Mr. Narendra Modi as our next Prime Minister. But we won't discuss about those two lectures here. Your syllabus ends with the 2004 Lok Sabha elections. Thank you so much and all the very best.